The second point that you mentioned, I thought that was very interesting, was the newspaper industry and the decline of the industry itself. And part of this is natural, meaning that's part of how civilizations evolve. We get different kinds of aspects that can go on and off. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think my thought is the one you just articulated. Uh, we got so used to the advertiser supported media model because it lasted 290 years. And it's, there's still little glimmers of it out there. And because of Procter and Gamble and United Airlines and the local dry cleaner wanting to reach mass audiences, they used mass media to do that, and it worked out well for everybody. The advertisers got an audience for their messages. The publishers got filthy rich because they were operating mostly in monopoly marketplaces, and the readers, the viewers, the listeners, got free or heavily subsidized content. They got that stuff for free. When the Beatles showed up on Ed Sullivan's show, when the men walked on the moon, when 9/11 happened, when I Love Lucy and Mr. Ed and Survivor were on TV, we didn't pay a penny. And it was a really nice ecosystem. 290 years it flourished, but it wasn't handed to us by God. It's not a part of the natural world. It's not Newtonian physics. It's not a given. And every part of the economy and every part of technology is vulnerable to being eventually obsoleted or disintermediated by better technology. And the internet, among its more utopian aspects, is a better technology. And for advertisers, especially, because, in the old days, let's just say you were selling running shoes. Well, you'd advertise in Runner's World, okay? And, you had some reason to believe that the people who were reading Runner's World were runners, so they're going to buy their sneakers. And by the same token, if you're selling Jell-O pudding pops, the two places you're probably going to go is magazines that reach moms who do most of the shopping, and TV
Right.
that reaches kids who are the consumers, right? And the media that you were advertising in were a proxy for the audience that you were trying to reach. They weren't perfect, but it was a decent proxy, and they had software that tried to maximize their targeting, right? But it was very, very rough. Then all of a sudden comes the internet, where Facebook, for example, as you know, Daniel, Facebook knows more about you by far than you know about you, because you've been telling it, you've been liking, you've been sharing, you've been uh, joining certain fan groups, you've been signaling every aspect. Sometimes you fill out quizzes if you're really naive. You've given them insight into every aspect of your personality that may not even be clear to you. And when they go to the Jell-O pudding pops people, when the Jell-O pudding pops people come to them, they know exactly who the target is for Jell-O pudding pops, because they know what people eat. So so that's way
Right.
better. So why, if you're an advertiser, if you're General Foods or whoever the hell owns Jell-O pudding pops, why the hell would you go into Good Housekeeping magazine, if such a thing exists? Or why would you advertise on Saturday morning cartoons if you can go directly to the person who has a deep pudding pop history and deep expressed interest in creamy desserts? So
So this rabbit hole actually goes much deeper than that. Um, and I know we had this discussion prior where there's this emerging field of what we call computational social science. And, we spoke about Cambridge Analytica, and we also spoke about another experiment that we're running, but for good, in the higher education industry. But just for our viewers, just to share, it's no longer about understanding and targeting, which is what you were mentioning. That's level one. We're past that. Now it's about nudging and influencing your behavior. So, a quick example of this is um, something has happened in the past 20 to 30 years that never happened before in human history. Meaning, for the first time at scale, we have vast amounts of human behavioral data, which we never had before. And so it's brought up this resurgence in the social sciences, especially psychology, once again, where given enough data, you can potentially, assuming within a certain deterministic model, you can potentially influence behavior. We already know, for example, crowd behavior and mobs sort of have this hive mind versus as an individual. We see this in sports psychology, and so on. And the fact that Facebook and these platforms can understand your basic psychology, and what they're using is the big five, which is, across all social sciences agreed upon as sort of that your personality trait is more or less consistent upon. um, and so to give you a concrete example, there is an algorithm out there that just needs around 12 to 15 variables of your activity on Facebook can determine what your big five personality traits look like. And then they can target a certain message for you. And the example was one cosmetics company um, um, uh, basically hired this algorithm and this team to do something similar where they wanted to sell the same lipstick. It's the same product. The Facebook and the algorithms figured out this section is introverted, this section is extroverted. For the extrovert women, it sent out have the best night of your life, right? But for the introvert women, it gave a message unleash your inner beauty. And I kid you not, the conversions were almost 200% higher than just targeting, as you said. So we're going into this world where it's not just about targeting you, it's about tweaking and nudging you in subtle ways. That's basically a marketer's wet dream, if I may say so.
and unfortunately a politician's.